All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're unpacking the awe-inspiring and frankly tragic story of the absolute largest aircraft ever built. We are talking about a literal titan of the skies, a massive engineering marvel that captured the imagination of aviation nerds all over the globe, the Antonov An-225.
So what actually happens when the world's biggest dream is destroyed? To understand the massive stakes of this story, we've got to start right in the middle of the action, February 2022 at Hostomel Airport in Ukraine. On the eve of the invasion, this gigantic aircraft was just resting quietly in its hangar, getting some routine maintenance. But within days, it was caught in the crossfire, and an international icon was turned into twisted metal.
Part 1. The Fall of a Giant. The destruction of a truly unique aviation marvel.
When we look at how the Battle of Antonov Airport unfolded, it's a terrifyingly rapid chain of events. On February 24, 2022, the Russian invasion of Ukraine begins, and Hostomel Airport becomes an immediate prime target. By the 27th, reports and images are already starting to leak out, showing the Mriya burning in its hangar. Crazy, right? And it wasn't until over a month later, on April 16th, that the aircraft's very first pilot could finally safely make it to the airfield to see the wreckage. What he found was devastating. His beloved plane was critically damaged, forward fuselage totally missing, right wing completely snapped.
And that loss carried a profound emotional weight for that first pilot, Alexander Holinenko. It's this incredible juxtaposition of massive cold machinery and deep human grief. He actually described the loss as a part of his soul being torn away, saying it felt like his child had been killed. To the people who built and flew her, she wasn't just a cargo plane, you know? She was the crowning achievement of their entire lives.
Moving on to Part 2, Birth of the Dream, Engineering a Behemoth for the Space Race.
Okay, to really grasp what was lost on that tarmac, we've got to rewind all the way back to the 1980s Soviet space program. The name Mriya perfectly captures the sheer ambition behind the project. Translated from Ukrainian, it literally just means dream. And this dream was designed with one highly specific, monumental task in mind: safely hauling the 60-ton Soviet Buran space shuttle on its back across massive geographic distances.
Now, the engineers pulled off the impossible by, well, not starting entirely from scratch. Instead, they took the already massive Antonov An-124 Ruslan, a beast with 4 engines, 150-ton capacity, and a single vertical tail, and they dramatically beefed it up. The resulting An-225 Mriya? It rocked 6 engines, an incredible 250-ton capacity, and a completely redesigned twin vertical tail. That tail was specifically engineered to handle the crazy turbulent wake of an actual spacecraft sitting right on top of its fuselage.
But what's really mind-blowing here is just how incredibly fast this dream went from a blueprint to the actual skies. Development kicked off in 1984. By December 21, 1988, it made its successful maiden flight in Kyiv. And by May 13, 1989, it actually achieved its primary mission, completing its first test flight carrying the Buran shuttle. We are talking about an astonishingly rapid turnaround for an unprecedented feat of aviation. 32. That staggering number is exactly how many steerable landing gear tires were needed just to help this colossal machine carry its own weight and, actually turn on a runway. Standard aviation gear just absolutely could not handle the sheer physics of a fully loaded Mriya.
Okay, Part 3, a record-breaking behemoth, over 240 world records in aviation history.
So, after the Soviet Union collapsed, the space program ended and Mriya was temporarily grounded, but it eventually found this incredible second life as a commercial cargo hauler. 253,820. That is the jaw-dropping weight, in kilograms, of 5 main battle tanks that the An-225 airlifted back in September 2001. That single flight set the official world record for the heaviest payload ever transported in human history.
These incredible feats show us exactly why the Mriya became the absolute go-to solution for moving the impossible. I mean, just look at these milestones. It flew a nearly 190,000-kilogram gas power plant generator to Armenia. It transported 2 massive 42.1-meter wind turbine blades to Denmark. It even hosted the highest altitude art exhibition at over 10,000 meters up in the air. And during the darkest days of the COVID-19 pandemic, it stepped up to ship 1,000 cubic meters of PPE in one single massive flight.
It is absolutely wild to think about the sheer scale of this plane. The An-225's internal cargo hold was 43.35 meters long.
To put that into perspective, the entire distance of the Wright brothers' historic first flight at Kitty Hawk could literally fit comfortably inside the belly of this single aircraft. Mind-blowing, right?
Section 4. The first pilot's bond. The human element behind the heavy machinery.
Let's zoom back in from all those massive numbers for a second and focus on Oleksandr Halenenko, a man whose quiet stoicism perfectly matched the immense stability of his aircraft. During the 2022 invasion, as heavy shelling was rocking their neighborhood, his wife was desperately urging him to seek shelter in their basement. And his response? No. First, we have to make up our bed. That startlingly calm reaction to such intense danger really highlights his unique psychological resilience. And honestly, that's a trait you absolutely need if you're the test pilot tasked with flying the world's largest experimental aircraft.
Oh, and I absolutely love this little anecdote from a 1990 air show in Oklahoma. The curious crowds there kept asking if the massive plane was a Boeing and where it was built. After repeatedly explaining that it was an Antonov from Ukraine, Halenenko actually ended up taping a map to the cargo wall just to show the awestruck Americans where Ukraine actually was on the globe. He joked later that along with aviation history, they were basically teaching geography.
There's this deeply personal detail that shows how his profound connection to the dream provided a small psychological escape. While he and his wife were sequestered in their home during the occupation in Bucha, they painted a beach scene just to pass the time. And naturally, he painted a tiny Mriya as a cloud up in the sky. It's this really poignant reminder of what he had lost, but also what kept his spirit going.
Which brings us to Section 5. Can Mriya fly again? Evaluating the costs and national ambitions. Looking forward, we've got to ask the multi-billion-dollar question. Will the ashes of Hostomel ever give rise to a new An-225? Well, the Antonov company states they actually have an incomplete second airframe left over from the 1980s and roughly 30% of the necessary parts to finish it on hand. That includes some structural components and even a few restored engines pulled directly from the wreckage of the original plane. But of course, that still leaves a massive 70% of the parts needed to make this thing fly again.
And building a new plane isn't just going to be a simple cut-and-paste repair job. It requires a monumental four-step process. First, a Ukrainian victory. Then, securing massive project financing. Third, complex parts salvage and integration. And finally, crucially, modernizing the systems. A new plane would need entirely modernized digital avionics to replace that outdated 1980s Soviet technology.
Now, the economic reality we're looking at here is pretty stark. The estimated cost to rebuild ranges widely, anywhere from $500 million to a staggering $3 billion, and it would take well over 5 years to pull off. A financial burden like that would require heavy international donations or war reparations. Plus, from a strictly utilitarian perspective, the aircraft is highly unfeasible for frequent use. Costing around $1 million per mission, it served a very niche purpose that simply isn't required in today's commercial logistics market.
But as President Zelensky has pointed out, resurrecting the Mriya isn't strictly about practical cargo logistics for Ukraine anymore. He's framed the project as a matter of ambition and national image. It's a profound statement of resilience and a really powerful way to honor the legacy of fallen pilots.
Ultimately, rebuilding Mriya represents the ultimate test of endurance. The underlying philosophy here is that if something so gargantuan, so technically complex, and so fundamentally broken can be fully restored, well, then so can the rest of the country. The Mriya is no longer just a feat of engineering. It's evolved into a towering symbol of a nation's completely unbreakable spirit. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought to ponder. Is rebuilding a multi-billion-dollar national symbol actually worth the astronomical cost, especially when an entire country must rebuild its future from the ground up? What is the true price tag on a dream, and can it ever really be destroyed? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the impossible.